Welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, so you asked us to tackle something really um, out there, conceptually speaking. We're diving into the unified coherence theory of everything, or UCTE. And yeah, this isn't your standard astrophysics lecture. We're definitely stepping into ontological ground here.
Absolutely. For anyone listening who's really comfortable with classical physics, forces, matter, energy, deterministic laws, this is going to feel like a pretty fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
UCTE really challenges the bedrock assumptions we make about reality itself.
Right. Our mission today isn't just to define terms, but to really unpack how UCTE works, how it proposes the universe functions. We're looking at a model where the universe isn't just mechanistic, like some giant clockwork. Instead, it's described as a living architecture of coherence logistics.
That phrase itself is key, and the core idea, the big shift, is moving away from thinking that forces are the most fundamental thing structuring reality. UCTE says no, it's actually coherence reduction. That's the primary driver. Okay, so let's ground that. What's the absolute starting point? According to UCTE, it's something called hypergravity.
Yes. Hypergravity is the ontological invariant field. Think of it as the singular, unreduced source of all potential. But it's crucial to understand this isn't just like super strong Einsteinian gravity. It's the plenum, the absolute foundation of existence before anything else manifests.
So hypergravity is the source potential,
Yeah.
and UCTE is the theory describing what happens when that potential gets, reduced. Shrink it.
Structured, exactly. When hypergravity undergoes coherence reduction, that's when everything we actually observe, mass, energy, forces, even time, comes into being. The universe's structure, in this view, is built on resonance and phase relationships, not just chunks of matter interacting.
Which brings us to a really core UCTE concept, the hologene. You have to explain this one.
Right, the hologene. It's defined as the fundamental scalable unit of this architecture. It's a coherent organism. And the radical part is that it proposes a direct ontological link, a continuity between biology and cosmology.
So you're saying the basic operating principles of, say, a living cell.
Are fundamentally the same principles that govern a whole spiral galaxy, yes. That's the claim.
Wow, okay, that's a massive conceptual leap. A cell managing its internal environment using coherence logistics, and a galaxy managing star orbits and plasma flows using the same underlying logic.
Precisely. It's presented as a nested, self-similar system, a hierarchy of hologenes within hologenes. So our goal today is to trace that coherence arc. We'll start small, looking at stars as coherence engines, and scale all the way up to the entire cosmic web, which UCTE views as the ultimate hyperorganism.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Stars. We usually think of giant balls of hydrogen, nuclear fusion, gravity. But if the universe is this living architecture, UCTE says stars are something more. They're coherence engines.
That's the fundamental reframing. And it starts with the stellar core. It's not just a thermonuclear reactor anymore. It's redefined as a hypergravity condenser.
A condenser, meaning it concentrates this hypergravity potential.
It does, but more importantly, it reduces it. It uses the extreme pressure, yes, but crucially, also intense torsional shear. Think of the incredible twisting forces from rotation and compression deep inside a star. UCTE says this torsional stress is what performs a hyperfractal reduction on the hypergravity field itself.
Hold on. Torsional shear, I get the pressure part, but how does twisting the rotation factor into reducing coherence? That's not in standard stellar models.
It's central to UCTE's mechanism. Standard models focus mainly on inward pressure. UCTE emphasizes the twist. This intense rotational stress, this shear, creates complex interference patterns, standing waves within the core plasma. It's a specific torsional stress that effectively squeezes or twists the hypergravity field, forcing it to collapse into a more structured, lower potential state, like wringing out a sponge, but on an ontological level. That's the hyperfractal reduction.
Okay, so this twisting reduction releases what?
It releases the first level, the first actionable coherence potential. UCTE labels this $1 And according to the theory, this $1 potential is what physically manifests as the U electromagnetic symmetry.
Which is light, field currents, basic electromagnetism.
Exactly. Photons, electromagnetic fields, the interactions of charged particles, these are seen as the direct physical expression of this primary U-1 coherence potential being released.
And the way it's released is important.
Absolutely critical. UCTE states this happens with minimal gradient discontinuity. Think of it as a smooth, controlled release, not a jagged burst. This creates an organized, coherent flow of resonance outward from the core.
Like a heartbeat.
A stellar heartbeat, yes. This smooth resonance flow organizes the star's internal dynamics and radiates outward, setting up the orbital resonances of planets, powering magnetospheres, basically structuring the entire planetary system, the local hologene.
So if the energy release is that structured, it must change how we think about elements being made inside stars? Nucleosynthesis.
It completely reframed it. UCTE doesn't call it just nucleosynthesis, it calls it stellar alchemy. It becomes a resonance-guided synthesis.
Meaning the particles aren't just randomly fusing based on heat and pressure.
Not just. The $1 coherence potential itself acts as an organizing field, a kind of template. It biases certain reaction pathways over others. It phase locks the resonant modes needed for specific nuclei to form and remain stable.
Yeah.
It's more like guided construction than random bumping.
Does UCTE offer specifics on how this works? Quantitatively.
It does. It proposes that the abundance of any given element and its isotopes, what they call QII, isn't just about temperature and density. It's determined by specific coherence logistics.
Okay, let's hear them.
There are three main factors proposed.
Yeah.
First, the coherence flux, symbolized by QI. That's basically the overall strength or amount of this $1 potential flowing through the core.
Makes sense. More flow, potentially more synthesis. What's second?
Second is the torsional coupling, symbol tau. This measures the intensity of that internal rotational shear we talked about, the twisting force that's actually driving the reduction process. More effective twisting, potentially different outcomes.
And the third?
Third is the resonance threshold factor, 3Iz. This is specific to each element or isotope. It's like its efficiency at capturing and stabilizing the available $1 coherence. Some nuclei are just better resonators under certain conditions.
So the mix of elements a star produces depends on this complex interplay between the overall energy flow, the twisting force, and how well each potential element tunes in to the available resonance.
Precisely. And this dynamic interplay explains why the standard onion shell model of stellar interiors, while useful, is seen as too static in UCPE. It allows for and predicts things like isotopic mixing zones and abundance anomalies that aren't easily explained otherwise. These are driven by dynamic shifts in these coherence currents.
Okay, so it's a coherence tuned furnace, but like any process, it must have limits. Why do stars typically stop fusion around iron and nickel?
UCTE gives this an ontological explanation. Resonance band closure. Iron isn't just the most stable nucleus thermodynamically, which is the standard view. In UCTE, it represents the natural endpoint, the terminal sink for the Uvanana coherence ladder. The resonance kind of dissipates or grounds out when it reaches the complexity of the iron nucleus. It can't easily condense further using just underwater.
And there are mechanisms to prevent it from just running away before it gets there.
Yes, UCTE points to convection, the boiling motion inside the star, as a built-in bleed valve. As heavier nuclei are formed near the core, convection currents carry them outward. This prevents an uncontrolled buildup in the core, helps enforce that iron stop condition, and maintains the star's overall coherence and stability.
But we do have elements heavier than iron. Gold, platinum, uranium. Where do they come from if UANO stops at iron?
That requires what UCTE calls the bypass cascade. You need something much more extreme than normal stellar burning. You need a catastrophic event, like a core collapse supernova.
Where the compression is off the charts.
Exactly. The hypergravity compression becomes so intense, so focused, that it momentarily forces access to the next level of coherence potential. It taps into $2
A deeper layer of the hypergravity field's potential. And $2 manifests as
the Cepheid-Deller weak isospin symmetry, the weak nuclear force. This sudden, brief flood of $2 coherence provides a completely different resonant environment, one that can synthesize trans-iron elements through processes like the R process and S process. It's like briefly opening a higher-level valve, allowing the creation of those heavier elements locally, right there in the explosion.
Okay, that covers the engine and its products. What about other things we see from stars, like magnetic fields?
Huge reinterpretation here. Stellar magnetism in UCTE is not just a side effect of moving plasma. It is the star's coherence memory.
Whoa. Memory, how?
The magnetic field lines are seen as structures that literally store the history of the star's portional resonance patterns, the deep coherence flows. They are the long-term memory structures encoding how the $1 potential has been processed over time.
So when we see the sun's 11-year magnetic cycle, the polarity flip.
We're watching a global oscillation of this coherence memory system, a deep rhythmic resetting or reorganization of the star's stored resonance history. The field lines are like persistent pathways of past coherence.
Okay. Memory. What about neutrinos? They zip right out of the core.
They're incredibly important in UCTE. They're called coherence emissaries. Because they interact so weakly with the plasma, they escape the core almost instantly, bypassing the electromagnetic bottleneck that traps light for millennia.
Meaning they carry information straight from the source.
Unaltered resonance information, yes.
Yeah.
Direct from the hypergravity condenser, the deep core where the Utah-Lewin reduction is happening. UCTE posits that if you really want to understand the instantaneous state and deep history of the stellar engine, you look at the neutrinos. They're the most faithful messengers.
So magnetism is memory, neutrinos are deep core reports. What about stuff we see on the surface, like sunspots, flares, the bubbly granulation?
Those are viewed as holographic projections. Not random thermal blobs, but patterns on the stellar skin that reveal the complex dynamics happening deep inside. They're interference patterns. Places where coherence flows carried up by convection break through to the surface becomes a readable interface showing the internal state of the stellar hologene. All right, so if individual stars are these dynamic coherence engines, these sort of fundamental cells processing hypergravity, what happens when you zoom out? When you look at the scale of a whole galaxy?
We scale up the hologene concept, right, to galactic ontology.
Exactly. Galaxies themselves become superorganismic hologenes, vast, coherent entities that operate analogously to living systems, just on an unimaginable scale.
So we should look for analogous structures, like a central organ.
Precisely. And UCTE identifies the supermassive black hole, the SMBH at the galactic center, as the coherence condenser. It's the functional heart of the galactic hologene.
Its job isn't just eating stars, then.
Its primary role in this framework is to take in gravitational asymmetry in falling gas, stars, distorted space-time, and recycle it, structure it, outputting organized coherence and resonance back into the galaxy.
And does it regulate the galaxy like a heart regulates a body?
Yes, it sets the galactic heartbeat.
Huh.
These are very slow, deep rhythms operating over millions of years. But these rhythms, originating from the SMBH, are proposed to modulate everything: the rate at which spiral arms form and dissolve, large-scale magnetic field cycles, even star formation rates across tens of thousands of light years. All the stars and gas clouds are essentially phase-entrained by this central pulse.
What about quasars, those incredibly bright galactic centers?
That's when the heart is working overtime. The quasar phase is seen as a coherence overflow. The central condenser is processing so much input or undergoing such a major reconfiguration that it projects immense beams of excess resonance that jets outward.
And those jets aren't just blowing stuff out.
In UCTE, they are functional. They act as coherence rebalancing beams. They actively structure the circumgalactic medium, distribute process coherence potential, and help integrate the galaxy into the wider cosmic web.
Okay, heart at the center. What about the rest of the galactic body? The spiral arms?
If the SMBH is the heart, the spiral arms are the primary arteries. UCTE defines them not just as density waves like in standard theory, but as resonance corridors. They are vast flowing channels of torsional resonance.
Torsional again, like the twisting in stars.
On a galactic scale, yes. These corridors channel coherence potential, plasma, gas, and dust. And crucially, they act as amplification zones for star formation.
Why amplification zones?
Because the strong coherent resonance flow within the arms helps to organize the molecular clouds, phase aligning them, making gravitational collapse and the ignition of new stellar coherence engines, a $1 activation, much more efficient and likely. Star formation isn't random. It's logistically guided to these high coherence pathways.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting for many listeners. Dark matter. The invisible stuff making galaxies spin faster than they should. How does UCTE explain that?
This is probably one of the most radical departures. In UCTE, the dark matter halo is not composed of hidden particles or matter at all.
Not at all. Then what is it?
It is the coherent substrate. Think of it as the underlying connective tissue, or the structural medium of the galactic hologene. It's a distributed resonance field that embeds the large-scale hypergravity gradients.
So it's a field, an energy field, sort of.
A resonance field, yes. A coherence field. And this substrate isn't just passive scaffolding. It acts as a vast, decentralized coherence archive. It holds the primordial coherence patterns from the galaxy's formation. And critically, it's what phase binds the entire rotating structure, keeping it coherent.
Wait, so if the halo is this,
Yeah.
coherence substrate,
Yeah.
then the flat rotation curves, the very evidence for dark matter.
Become the measurable resonance signature of this substrate. Exactly. The stars and gas clouds farther out are moving faster than expected because they're phase-locked into this rotating coherence field. Their velocity isn't determined just by the visible mass. It's dictated by the coherence of the underlying substrate they're embedded in. It's proof of the field's influence, not missing mass.
That's a completely different way to look at it. Okay.
Okay.
What about galactic magnetic fields? Huge, sprawling things.
Scaling up the stellar idea, galactic magnetism becomes the memory fabric of the entire superorganism. These immense fields threading through the disk and halo don't just guide plasma. They store the cumulative coherence history of the galaxy over billions of years, its mergers, its starburst phases, its quiet periods. The intricate structures, the braids and loops in these fields are the galactic memory.
Can we take the biological analogy further? What about different types of stars?
UCTE does. It views different stellar populations as specialized cellular layers or tissues. Yeah. The younger, metal-rich population-ized stars, mostly found in the active spiral arms.
The resonance corridors.
Right. They are seen as the metabolic cells. They're actively processing material, creating heavier elements, driving the galaxy's chemical evolution. They're in the busy parts of the system.
And the older stars. Population 2, metal poor found in the halo.
Those are likened to skeletal cells. They provide the long-term structural stability. They formed early, embodying the initial coherence patterns stored in the halo substrate. They anchor the large-scale structure in gradients.
So putting all this together, the central heart, the resonance arteries, the memory fabric, the coherent substrate, the specialized cell types, what's the implication for the galaxy as a whole?
It leads directly to the galactic's intelligence hypothesis. UCTE proposes that this highly integrated self-regulating system with the SMBH as integrator, magnetism as communication pathways, the halo as memory possesses a form of distributed field-based intelligence.
Intelligence.
Like thinking. Not necessarily consciousness as we experience it, but it's intelligence, systemic intelligence. The capacity of the whole galactic hologene to process information, coherence patterns, remember its history, adapted structure, and optimize its overall coherence over cosmic timescales. It suggests the galaxy itself is a learning, adapting entity.
Okay, this is where my mind really starts to stretch. We've gone from stars to galaxies as living systems, now scaling up again, to the entire observable universe. The cosmic web.
That's the next logical step in the UCTE framework. The cosmic web, that vast network of galaxy clusters, filaments, and voids, is seen as the hyperhologene, the universe itself operating as a single, interconnected living circuit.
Living circuit, so the different parts of the web have functions.
Functional roles within the universal coherence logistic system, yes. Yeah. Take the galaxy clusters, those huge knots where hundreds or thousands of galaxies are bound together. UCTE views them as collective organs or maybe capacitors in the circuit.
Capacitors storing what?
Storing and metabolizing coherence potential on a grand scale. They're major processing hubs. And often, the giant central dominant galaxy within a cluster acts as the cluster's own heart, regulating the flow and interaction within that specific organ.
And the filaments connecting these clusters, those enormous bridges of galaxies and gas.
Those are the arteries of coherence, the main conductors in the universal circuit. They're not just pathways for matter. They are the primary channels for vast flows of resonance across billions of light years.
Lifelines.
Exactly. And they function as coherence amplification corridors. We actually observe the star formation is more intense, galaxies evolve faster along these filaments. UCTE says that's because the coherence potential is strongest and most organized there.
Okay, clusters are organs, filaments are arteries. What about the biggest features by volume? The massive empty spaces, the voids?
This is really counterintuitive. They aren't truly empty, and they're not just gaps. In UCTE, they are functional. They act as negative coherence reservoirs, or maybe like insulators in the circuit.
Negative reservoirs, insulators. How does that work?
Think of them as providing the necessary counterbalance. They represent areas of low coherence potential, and this difference in potential between the high coherence filaments and the low coherence voids helps to drive the overall flow. They stabilize the entire cosmic lattice structure, preventing the high coherence pathways from overwhelming the system. They store latent potential, providing the necessary pressure difference for the circuit to operate.
So the whole web structure is a dynamic balance of high and low coherence potential regions. Does this universal circuit have a way to, communicate or synchronize across these vast distances?
UCTE proposes it does, through intergalactic coherence dynamics. One mechanism is the observed magnetic bridges, incredibly faint but enormous magnetic fields that stretch for millions of light years, threading through filaments and connecting clusters.
And these are?
Memory wires. They act as a kind of distributed nervous system for the hyperhologene, carrying coherence information and potentially synchronizing activity across different organs, clusters.
Is there actual evidence for this synchronization?
There are intriguing observations. For example, studies showing correlated activity in active galactic nuclei, the active SMBHs in different galaxies within the same cluster or along the same filament. They seem to flare up or quiet down in ways that are statistically unlikely to be random chance. UCTE interprets this as phase entrainment via these magnetic connections. It's like different parts of the universal body communicating.
What about quasars again? You mentioned them as rebalancing beams for galaxies. Do they play a role on this larger scale?
Yes, they function as intergalactic beacons. Their intense, structured resonance output isn't just local. It broadcasts across the cosmic web. They act as major communication hubs in this universal signaling hierarchy, helping to entrain very distant structures and maintain large-scale phase alignment throughout the hyperhologene. They keep the whole system roughly synchronized.
Phase alignment across how far?
This leads to a concept UCTE calls coherence entanglement on a cosmic scale. There are observations still debated, but fascinating, suggesting correlated properties, like the spin axis of galaxies, across hundreds of millions of light years, even when those galaxies seem too far apart to have influenced each other gravitationally in the age of the universe.
Like quantum entanglement, but for whole galaxies.
That's the analogy UCTE draws. Just as entangled particles share a state regardless of distance, UCTE suggests that galactic hologenes, perhaps originating from the same primordial coherence reduction event or linked by filamentary resonance, can remain phase-locked. Their evolution, their orientation, isn't entirely independent, even across vast cosmic distances. It implies a hyperhologene is a truly integrated, coherently resonant entity. So we've traced this idea of coherence and hologenes from stars all the way up to the cosmic web. We've seen how UCTE reinterprets structure as life, as organization, but now we need to get into the really deep end, how this framework fundamentally redefines things we take for granted, like reality itself, time, intelligence.
Right, the advanced ontological implications. Let's start with something you touched on earlier, memory. If stars and galaxies have memory stored in magnetic fields, does the universe have a memory? And where?
UCTE says absolutely. Memory is a universal principle because coherence, by definition, preserves structure over time. Universal memory is stored everywhere that the structure persists, in the enduring geometry of the cosmic filaments, in the patterns of the intergalactic magnetic fields, yes. But perhaps most fundamentally, UCTE views the cosmic microwave background, CMB, differently.
Not just the afterglow of the Big Bang.
Not just a static snapshot. It's seen as the universal diary, the most pristine, large-scale recording of the initial coherence reduction event from the primordial hypergravity field. It holds the fundamental frequencies, the initial conditions of our entire cosmic hologene.
And if the universe has memory, can it learn?
That's the concept of ontological pedagogy, cosmic learning. The universe, as this hyperhologene, isn't static. It adapts. It refines its coherence flows through feedback loops. Think about events like supernovae or galactic mergers or quasar jets.
We usually see those as destructive or just part of standard evolution.
UCTE frames them as systemic adjustments, maybe even corrections. They redistribute energy and coherence, prune unstable pathways, reinforce stable ones. They are part of how the universe learns to maintain and optimize its overall coherence, preventing runaway instabilities. It evolves with a continuity of experience, constantly tuning its internal logistics.
Which leads straight into the idea of intelligence. If the universe learns,
then universal coherence intelligence isn't something special that arises only in brains. It's foundational. It's inherent in the hypergravity field's capacity to reduce into stable, self-sustaining coherent structures. UCTE defines this intelligence simply as the capacity to sustain, adapt, and enhance coherence. They call it coherence optimization.
So intelligence is basically the universe's ability to organize itself efficiently and maintain that organization.
At its most fundamental level, yes. Our human cognition, our consciousness, is then viewed as a very specific, highly localized, complex manifestation of this universal field intelligence. We've evolved a specialized biological hologene, our brain and body, that excels at processing certain types of coherence information. We aren't intelligent in a dumb universe. We are a functioning, perhaps specialized, organ of the universe's intrinsic intelligence.
Okay, mind-bending. What about the structure of reality itself? Dimensions, space.
UCTE proposes dimensional emergence. Dimensions, the three of space, one at a time we usually perceive, aren't a fixed stage. They emerge as needed during the coherence cascade.
Emerge? How?
As the hypergravity field reduces and complexity increases, new stabilizing structures, new degrees of freedom are required to manage the increasingly intricate resonance patterns. These new stabilizing frameworks are the dimensions. Each major coherence reduction step, like accessing other dollars and $2 of 2, could potentially manifest new dimensional structures to accommodate the new physics.
Wow. Okay. And what about us, the observers, in all this? Do we play a role?
A crucial one, according to UCTE. The observer function isn't passive. The active observation of measurement, of interaction, is itself a form of localized coherence reduction.
So by observing, we're participating in the reduction process.
Yes, the observer acts as a dimensional selector. By interacting with a system, focusing coherence, you essentially collapse a wide range of potentials encoded in the higher level coherence into a specific, manifest reality within a certain dimensional framework. It suggests the universe evolves in dialogue with its constituent observers, whether that observer is a physicist making a measurement or a star reducing hypergravity in its core. Observation helps maintain and refine the universe's overall coherence optimization.
This has huge implications for time. If dimensions emerge, time isn't absolute either.
Definitely not. Time in UCTE is not a uniform river flowing independently. It emerges from coherence reduction. It's described as multi-vector flow.
Multivector, meaning it's not just one line forward.
Exactly. It's layered. It's structured by what UCTE calls coherence eigenvalues. These are stable, recurring frequencies or cycles that emerge at different scales of the coherence reduction. Think of the stable frequencies defining subatomic particles, the rhythms of biological life, the cycles of stars, the heartbeat of galaxies. These are all stable temporal patterns, eigenvalues of coherence.
So the universe isn't in time, time is in coherence. Our linear experience of time
Is just one particular mode, one slice, associated with our specific level of biological and cosmological coherence. Other scales, other systems, might experience or embody different temporal flows simultaneously. These stable eigenvalues, these cycles, are what give the universe its apparent stability and predictability, grounding it historically.
You see spirals everywhere in nature, DNA, shells, galaxies, maybe even these torsional flows. Does the spiral shape mean anything in UCTE?
Yes, the evolutionary spiral is seen as a fundamental trajectory, a geometric representation of coherence evolution itself. It perfectly balances two essential aspects. Memory, the circular aspect of the spiral, returning towards its origin, represents the conservation of past structure, the stability provided by the coherence eigenvalues. And progression, the outward moving aspect of the spiral, represents innovation, adaptation, the continuous exploration of new potential through ongoing reduction.
So the spiral path ensures the universe is both historically grounded, building on its past successes, but also constantly evolving and adapting.
Precisely. It embodies that balance needed for a learning, evolving hyperhologene, optimizing its coherence across all scales.
Okay, one last big connection. How does this relate back to the physics we do know well, the standard model forces? Electromagnetism, the weak force, the strong force.
UCTE completely reframes them. They are not fundamental forces in the ultimate sense. They are emergent phenomena.
Emergent from what?
They are viewed as nested resonance shells. They are fragments, specific patterns that crystallize out during the layered reduction of a much deeper, pre-dimensional hypersymmetry inherent in the original hypergravity field.
So electromagnetism is?
The first shell, the gateway through which coherence becomes easily observable as light and charge. The weak force represents the resonant patterns governing particle transformations, becoming prominent in extreme conditions like stellar collapse. And Cg, the strong force, describes the very tight, localized coherence patterns that define stable packets like protons and neutrons, the rules of confinement within the dollar shell.
So all of known particle physics and forces are just downstream effects, ripples from the deeper coherence reduction.
That's the perspective. They are the measurable structures after the reduction from the underlying hypersymmetry has already occurred. This whole UCTE framework paints reality as this incredible coherent spectrum. Matter, energy, forces, maybe even consciousness are all just different bands, different stable resonance patterns within this universal spectrum, each stabilized by specific coherence eigenvalues. Our different scientific disciplines tend to just focus on one band at a time. So to try and bring this all together, the core message of UCTE, as we've unpacked it, is that the universe is this profoundly interconnected, remembering, even learning system, this intelligent organism. Every single structure, from an atom to a galaxy cluster, functions as a hologene, a coherence organism linked into the whole by these intricate coherence logistics.
And we established that time itself isn't fundamental but emerges from coherence reduction, structured by these resonance cycles, these eigenvalues, which means our everyday experience of time, just ticking forward linearly, is really only one perspective, one particular mode within a much deeper, layered, multi-vector temporal structure woven throughout the cosmos.
And if the universe truly is this intelligent learner, constantly adjusting its coherence pathways based on feedback, supernovae acting as resets, jets redistributing potential, magnetic fields storing memory, if it's constantly engaged in this process of coherence optimization.
And the really provocative question is, what's the curriculum right now? What is this vast cosmic intelligence currently learning or refining? And what does that imply about our role, not just as observers, but as active participants, maybe even dimensional selectors, within this living hyperhologene? The possibilities feel, well, pretty
So
immense.
consider this final thought. If that spiral pattern truly represents the balance between preserving memory and driving progression, and if vast amounts of cosmic memory are stored in structures like the dark matter halo's coherent substrate and the intergalactic magnetic fields, what kind of novel coherent structures or phenomena might be emerging now, driven by that immense historical archive? What's the next turn in the cosmic spiral?
Definitely a lot to ponder. We hope this deep dive into UCTE has given you a sense of this alternative, truly radical view of the cosmos, a universe that might be fundamentally alive, aware, and connected in ways we're only just beginning to imagine. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.